Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling a real giant of 20th century philosophy, a big one.
We are. We're diving into Jean-Paul Sartre and his magnum opus, Being and Nothingness. All 700 dense pages of it.
Right. It's definitely a climb, but people say it's this, incredible map to understanding human freedom, consciousness, existence itself, really.
It absolutely is. And Sartre ideas, they tend to follow this fascinating trajectory. He actually described it himself. First, people attack them as completely absurd.
Okay.
Then, stage two, they're admitted to be true, but dismissed as, obvious, maybe insignificant.
Happens all the time.
And finally, stage three, they're seen as so crucial, so important, that the original critics start claiming they actually discovered them first.
Yeah. Right. So our goal today is to maybe jump you, the listener, straight to that third stage.
If that's the ambition, we're not just giving you a summary. We want to use Being and Nothingness like a detailed guide, a map to the very structure of your own experience.
So we'll be unpacking Sartre's specific arguments, his existential phenomenology, right? Looking at consciousness, freedom, the self, how we deal with other people, the whole package.
Exactly. We're treating this philosophy not as abstract theory, but as something that describes the mechanics of being human. What does it actually feel like to exist, according to Sartre?
And to do that, we need to understand his key players. Being in itself, being for itself, and this really central idea of nothingness.
Correct. But first, we have to start where Sartre started, by basically dismantling one of the cornerstones of Western thought, the idea of a unified, stable self.
The Cartesian self.
The Cartesian self.
Okay, let's get into it. For centuries, philosophy pretty much revolved around Descartes' big line, I think, therefore I am, cogito ergo sum.
Right. The cogito, it put the ego, the I, right at the center, the absolute starting point, the thing doing the thinking.
But Sartre, even early on, wasn't buying it. He wrote The Transcendence of the Ego back in 1936, taking aim at this.
He did. It was a direct challenge to Husserl too, but fundamentally a challenge to Descartes. Sartre's radical claim was, consciousness, in its primary state, doesn't contain an I. The ego isn't the inhabitant, it's something else entirely.
Okay, hold on. If I'm thinking, how can there not be an I doing the thinking? That feels counterintuitive.
It does initially. Sartre makes this really crucial distinction between the consciousness that acts, that thinks, perceives, doubts, and the consciousness that reflects on that action.
Two levels of consciousness.
Sort of.
Well,
He argues that the consciousness that says, I am aware that I am thinking, or I am aware that I doubt, is actually a secondary operation. It's looking at the original consciousness.
and the original consciousness.
The original consciousness is too busy being directed outward toward the world, toward the thing it's thinking about. It doesn't have the distance to look back at itself and posit an I.
Can you give an example? He talks about doubt, right?
Yeah.
Descartes' methodical doubt versus something else.
Exactly. Descartes used methodical doubt, the decision to doubt everything, as his proof. Sartre says he confused that with spontaneous doubt.
Spontaneous doubt being.
Imagine you catch a quick glimpse of something moving in your peripheral vision. There's an immediate consciousness of uncertainty. That's spontaneous doubt. It's a state of awareness directed at the world.
Okay, so that's the primary consciousness, just uncertainty about that movement.
Right. Then the Cartesian move is reflective. You step back and think, I am aware that I am uncertain about that movement. Therefore, I, the doubter, exist.
I see. The I am part only comes when you make the first awareness the object of a second awareness.
Precisely. The original awareness was just consciousness of the uncertain movement. It wasn't consciousness of itself as an I.
So Sartre's starting point, his absolute foundation, is this earlier, more immediate awareness.
Yes, he calls it the pre-reflective cogito. It's the immediate self-consciousness that is inherent in any conscious act. Like the consciousness of pleasure is the pleasure. They aren't separate. It's the basic mode of being for consciousness.
But if it's self-conscious, even pre-reflectively, why isn't there an I? What defines this primary consciousness then?
Two key things. First, borrowing from Husserl, it's intentionality. All consciousness is consciousness of something. It always points beyond itself, towards an object. It's inherently relational, directed outwards.
So it's not like a container holding thoughts, it's more like a pointing.
A vector, exactly. A directedness towards the world. This establishes our fundamental being in the world.
Okay.
And the second characteristic,
It's non-personal character. At this primary pre-reflective level, the truth isn't, I am conscious of the chair. It's more like, there is consciousness of the chair. Il y a Conscience de la chaise in French.
There is consciousness. No, I need it.
We need it yet. The I and the me, the whole ego complex, only appears when we reflect, when that initial flow of consciousness becomes the object of a reflective thought.
So the ego, the self that I usually think of as me, isn't in consciousness. It's something consciousness looks at. Exactly. The ego is transcendent. It's an object for consciousness, just like the chair is an object. It's an ideal unity we construct.
An ideal unity. How so?
Well, think about physical objects. We see this tree, that building, this car, and they all point towards a larger ideal unity we call the world. The ego functions similarly for our inner states.
So the I unifies my actions.
The I is the ideal unity of actions. I run, I decide, I speak.
And the me unifies my states and qualities.
The me is the ideal unity of states and qualities. I am happy, I am French, I have these characteristics. But crucially, Sartre insists you never have ego consciousness, only consciousness of the ego.
Wow. So by kicking the ego out of the driver's seat, Sartre makes consciousness this pure, spontaneous activity, always directed outward, never really pinned down.
That's the fundamental move. Consciousness has to be this pure dynamism, this relation, this lack almost, to avoid being just another determined thing in the world.
And that sets the stage for everything else: freedom, choice, responsibility.
It absolutely does. And it leads us straight into his two fundamental categories of being, the two basic ways anything can exist.
Okay, so we have this dynamic, non-personal consciousness pointing outwards. What is it pointing at? What's the nature of the world it encounters? This is Sartre's being in itself, right? The in itself.
Correct. The in itself is the realm of things, non-conscious reality, physical objects, brute facts. Its defining feature is simple. Being is what it is.
Being is what it is. Sounds simple, almost like a tautology, like A equals A.
It sounds like it, but Sartre means it as a synthetic statement, describing a specific region of being. It's not just logical identity, it's ontological density. It has three key characteristics.
Okay, first.
It's opaque to itself. Because it's completely full of itself, it has no internal distance, no self-reflection. A rock is just rock. All the way through. Doesn't refer to itself. It's pure, solid positivity.
Solid. Got it. Second.
It's sheer contingency. It's uncreated, without any reason for its existence, without necessity. It can't be logically derived. It just is.
Why does this rock exist? No reason. It just does.
Exactly. Sartre uses the term de trop superfluous, excessive. It's just there, eternally, without justification. Brute facticity.
Okay. Opaque, contingent.
Yeah.
Is there a third?
Those are the main two aspects flowing from being is what it is, the self-identity and the lack of foundation. It's just pure, solid, unjustified presence.
Right. So if that's the, in itself, solid, opaque contingent, then the other realm, the realm of consciousness, the being for itself or for itself, must be the complete opposite.
The complete opposite. The for itself is the being of consciousness.
Yeah.
And its definition is radically different. It's defined as the annihilation of the in itself.
Annihilation, like making it nothing.
In a sense, it introduces nothingness, distance, lack into the solid world of the in itself. Its defining characteristic is non-identity. The for itself is what it is not and is not what it is.
Okay. Is what it is not and is not what it is.
Right.
That needs unpacking. That sounds like a contradiction.
It is a kind of contradiction. But that's the point. Consciousness is never fixed. If I say I am a writer, at the very moment I say it, I am also the consciousness aware of being a writer, which is not the writer itself. I transcend the label.
So I am the writer. That's what I identify as. But I am not the writer because I'm the awareness of it always escaping the definition.
Exactly. And I am not yet the writer. I will be, based on my future projects. But I am already oriented towards that future. It's this constant state of flux, of not coinciding with oneself.
So unlike the rock, which just is, consciousness is defined by a gap, a distance from itself and from the world.
Precisely. By itself, the for itself is nothing solid. It's like a reflection or a hole in being. It only makes sense in relation to the in itself. It negates or illuminates. It exists by creating distance from that solid being.
And this distance, this gap, this lack, this is where nothingness comes in. You said earlier, man is the being by whom nothingness comes into the world.
Yes. This is absolutely central. Nothingness isn't some void floating out there in space. It's not a pre-existing reality. For Sartre, nothingness is actively introduced into the world by consciousness.
How? Through what?
Through our ability to question, to doubt, to imagine what isn't, to recognize absence. Think about judgment, to say, this table is not black. I have to introduce a negation into the world. The world itself just is. It doesn't contain not blackness until my consciousness brings that negation to bear.
So every time I think about what's missing or what could be different, I'm actually creating nothingness.
You're revealing the nothingness that is inherent in the structure of the foot itself. Without consciousness, the world would just be pure, undifferentiated in itself. A plenum. It takes the for itself to carve out absences, possibilities, lacks.
This sounds very abstract. Can we make it more concrete? The famous example is Pierre in the cafe, right?
The Pierre example is perfect for seeing nothingness not as a mere thought, but as an experience, an ontological event.
Okay, walk us through it. I go to the cafe expecting to meet my friend Pierre. I look around.
Right. You enter the cafe. The cafe itself, the tables, the chairs, the other customers, the noise, all of that is the solid background, the ground itself.
Okay.
Your consciousness, however, isn't just passively registering this. It's actively searching for a specific figure, Pierre, fueled by your expectation, your project of meeting him.
And as I scan the room, looking for him.
As you scan, your consciousness performs what Sartre calls a double annihilation. It actively negates the existing reality in two ways.
Double annihilation. Okay, first way.
First, everything in the cafe that is not Pierre the waiter, the woman in the corner, the sugar dispenser, sinks into an undifferentiated ground. They lose their individual significance because they aren't what you're looking for. Your consciousness actively pushes them into the background, negating their presence as relevant figures.
So I'm negating the present things because they aren't Pierre. What's the second annihilation?
The second annihilation creates the figure you're looking for, but finds it as an absence. Your disappointment, your frustrated expectation, doesn't just register a lack of Pierre. It actively structures the cafe around his not being there.
It's not just that he's not there, it's that his absence is there.
Exactly. His absence becomes a positive presence, a whole shaped like Pierre and the fabric of the cafe. Sartre's amazing phrase is that Pierre raises himself as nothingness on the ground of the annihilation of the cafe. The absence becomes the figure.
Wow. So my consciousness, my expectation, literally makes Pierre's non-existence a feature of the cafe itself, an absence I can almost feel.
Precisely. It's an intuitive apprehension of nothingness. Without your conscious project, the cafe is just full. It takes the for itself with its inherent ability to create distance and negate, to make absence real.
And this power to negate, to create distance from the icks, that's the root of our freedom.
That is the absolute root of human freedom.
Okay, so if consciousness, the for itself, is defined by this lack, this nothingness, this constant state of not being what it is, then we get to the core existentialist claim. We're not just free, we're condemned to be free.
That condemnation is inescapable, because the for itself can never coincide with itself, because it's always more than whatever it currently is or was. It must choose. It's forced to perpetually create itself moment by moment.
Freedom isn't something we have, like a possession.
No, freedom is the being of consciousness. It's not an attribute. It's the very stuff of the for itself. We are freedom.
But if we are freedom, total freedom, why don't we feel it all the time? Most of the time, I feel constrained, determined by my past, my habits, my situation.
But how do we experience this freedom when we become aware of it? Sartre argues that the direct consciousness of freedom isn't joy or liberation primarily. It's anguish.
Anguish, not just fear or anxiety. What's the difference?
It's a crucial difference. Fear is directed at the world, at the in itself. Anxiety might be a general unease. Anguish, for Sartre, is the specific, reflective awareness of my own freedom as the foundation of my values and choices, without any external guarantee.
Okay.
It's the realization that I am entirely responsible for what I become, that I am perpetually making myself, and that there's nothing solid in me or outside me that compels my choices.
The precipice example illustrates this, right?
Yeah.
Standing on the edge of a cliff.
It's the perfect illustration. Standing on the cliff edge, I might feel fear of the loose rock crumbling in itself, fear of the wind pushing me, in itself. These are external threats.
Right, things happening to me.
But then, anguish rises when I become aware of a different possibility. The possibility of throwing myself off, not because of any external force, but because I could choose it.
The horror isn't just falling, it's the horror that I might decide to jump.
Exactly. Anguish is the recognition that nothing compels me to save my life. All my past resolutions, my survival instinct, these are just motives. And there's always a gap, a nothingness, between the motive and the act.
A gap I have to cross with a free choice.
A gap I cross with a free choice right now.
Yeah.
The motive to live only has power if I freely choose to uphold it in this instant. The future self who steps back from the edge, I have to create that self now, and nothing guarantees I will. Anguish is the consciousness of being my own future, but in the mode of not yet being it.
Wow. That's vertiginous, that sense that my past doesn't determine my next action, that I have to re-choose my values constantly.
It's the consciousness of being totally alone with your choice, the sole source of your values.
Okay, if anguish is this fundamental experience of freedom, why isn't it our constant state? Why do we spend so much time trying to convince ourselves we aren't that free?
Because, Sartre says, our fundamental response to anguish is flight. We run away from it. And the primary way we flee is through adopting an attitude of psychological determinism.
Pretending we're not free, blaming our actions on other things.
Exactly. It's primarily an attitude of excuse, as Sartre calls it. We invent forces within us, a fixed character, uncontrollable drives, complexes, the unconscious things that act like objects, like the in itself.
I couldn't help it, that's just my temper. My childhood made me this way.
Precisely. We try to turn the fluid, free for itself, into a determined thing. We try to say, I am never anything but what I am, trying to regain the solid positivity of the in itself.
We try to make ourselves into rocks.
We try to make ourselves into rocks to escape the burden of choosing. But the very act of trying to convince ourselves, the very anxiety we feel about our supposed deterministic nature, reveals the bad faith involved. It shows we know, on some level, that we are choosing this deterministic view.
So fleeing freedom by pretending to be an object, that seems like a core human problem for Sartre.
It's a fundamental mode of being, deeply connected to how we interact with others.
Right, the other. Everything changes when someone else walks into the room, doesn't it? Sartre says the other is the indispensable mediator between myself and me. What does that mean?
It means my sense of self, especially my objective sense of self, is fundamentally dependent on the existence of other people looking at me.
How does that work? The mere appearance of another person.
The mere appearance of the other, their look, their regard, has a profound immediate effect. It transforms me. My fluid internal world of or itself, which I experience intimately without distance, suddenly becomes an object for that other person.
I become a thing in their world.
Exactly. I am fixed, defined, judged from the outside. My actions, my body, my very being are suddenly constituted as an objective reality and in itself within the other's field of perception. This isn't an intellectual judgment, it's an immediate ontological shift.
And the primary emotion tied to this objectification is shame.
Shame is the key. Shame isn't just embarrassment about a specific act. For Sartre, it's the immediate, visceral recognition. I am this object that the other sees. It's a shudder of realizing my objective nature for the other.
Like being caught doing something awkward.
Yes, but it goes deeper. In shame, I experience my own being as an object for another consciousness. I recognize that I have an outside, a nature that is totally out of my control, defined by the other's perspective. I can't compare my intimate feeling for itself with this objective being in itself because they're in different dimensions. Shame confirms this radical dependency on the other for my objective self.
So this constant possibility of being turned into an object by the other, combined with the anguish of our own freedom, this creates a situation ripe for self-deception. Which brings us to bad faith, mauvaise foi.
Exactly. Bad faith is the intricate way we lie to ourselves to escape the tension between our freedom for itself and our facticity or objective being in itself, especially as it's revealed by the other.
It's like trying to be an object when you're free, or pretending to be free when you're acting like an object.
It's precisely that kind of internal contradiction. Sartre defines it as holding the unity of being and non-being in the same consciousness. It's denying qualities, you have, like freedom, or affirming qualities you don't, like being just your job.
The classic example is the cafe waiter. How does he show bad faith?
The cafe waiter isn't just doing his job. He's playing at being a waiter. His movements are a little too precise, a little too waiter-esque. He's trying to coincide completely with his role.
He's trying to convince himself and others that he is a waiter through and through, like an object defined by its function.
Yes, he's trying to become the in itself of waiterness. He wants to reduce his entire being to this function, this fixed identity.
But he can't, can he? Because he's for itself.
He can't. He knows, pre-reflectively, that he is not just a waiter. He is the consciousness that is choosing to act like a waiter right now. He transcends the role. He has to play at being a waiter, precisely because he isn't one in the way a table is a table. Bad faith is his attempt to ignore this transcendence, to flee the freedom that allows him to be more than just a waiter.
So he's caught. To be a waiter sincerely, he has to act in a way that shows he's not just a waiter.
Right. And this leads to a surprising conclusion. Even sincerity can be bad faith.
How? Isn't sincerity the opposite of bad faith? Trying to be honest about who you are.
It seems like it should be. But when we try to be sincere, what are we doing? We're trying to define ourselves, to pin ourselves down. I am fundamentally X, or deep down, I am Y.
We're trying to capture our essence.
Exactly. We're trying to treat the self as a discoverable thing in itself with fixed qualities. If I declare I am sincere, I admit I am lazy, I'm trying to constitute laziness as my being.
But the for itself isn't a fixed being.
It isn't. The very moment I declare myself lazy, I am also the consciousness transcending that label, capable of acting non-lazily in the next instant. Sincerity, in its attempt to achieve a fixed self-identity, becomes another way of denying the fluid, dynamic, free nature of the for itself. It's trying to turn a process into a static object.
So we're condemned to this constant tension, never quite coinciding with ourselves and often lying to ourselves about it.
That's the human condition, according to Sartre. And this view puts him sharply at odds with theories that try to explain these tensions by positing hidden parts of the mind, like Freud's psychoanalysis.
Right, Sartre famously rejected the unconscious. Why? How does bad faith replace the Freudian unconscious?
He rejects the unconscious because for him it functions as another deterministic excuse, another way to flee responsibility. Freud explains resistance in therapy, for example, as the id, or unconscious forces blocking painful truths.
The patient genuinely doesn't know why they're resisting.
That's the Freudian idea. But Sartre asks, how can the resistance know which truths to block unless it has some awareness of those truths? If the resistance comes from some deep, hidden part, the neurosis, that part must be, in a way, conscious of what it's hiding. It needs to recognize the analyst's interpretation as dangerous in order to fight it.
So the unconscious mechanism actually requires some form of consciousness to work.
It requires what Sartre would just call bad faith. The patient is aware, pre-reflectively, of the painful truth and the desire to avoid it. The resistance isn't some alien force. It's the patient consciously, though perhaps implicitly, choosing self-deception. They're lying to themselves in full consciousness.
So the complex Freudian model of id, ego, superego, and repression just becomes conscious self-deception.
For Sartre, yes. The theory of the unconscious is just a more elaborate form of bad faith, an intellectual structure we use to avoid the raw, uncomfortable truth of our own contradictory choices and our freedom. Admitting an unconscious destroys absolute freedom. Affirming absolute freedom means seeing the unconscious as bad faith.
Okay, we've got consciousness as freedom, the trap of bad faith, the impact of the other. How does this free consciousness exist in time? Specifically, what about the past? Is it just gone, or does it determine us?
Neither, really. For Sartre, the past isn't wiped out, but it's also not a fixed weight determining the present. The meaning and significance of the past are constantly being redefined by my present project.
My present project. Meaning what I'm trying to do now, my goals.
Exactly. What I am aiming for now, in the future, determines how I interpret and value my past. I alone decide the bearing of past events by how I project myself forward.
Can you give an example of this? Retroactive meaning-making.
Sartre uses the example of someone who had an intense, maybe confusing, mystic crisis as a teenager. Years later, if that person freely chooses to convert to a religion.
Then the teenage crisis suddenly looks like a premonition, an early sign.
Precisely. The present project of conversion reaches back and illuminates that past event, giving it the meaning of a sacred sign or an unheeded call.
But if instead they became a staunch atheist?
Then the exact same teenage event gets reinterpreted as, say, an accident to puberty, a hormonal imbalance, or youthful confusion. The brute fact of the event doesn't change, but its meaning is entirely dependent on the free choice of the present project.
So my past only is what it is in light of my present choices about my future. That makes the endpoint, death, incredibly significant. Malraux's quote comes to mind. The terrible thing about death is that it transforms life into destiny.
That captures Sartre's view perfectly. Death is the moment when my, for itself, my freedom, my project, ceases. What's left? Only my being for others.
The object I was in their eyes.
Yes. My life, which was always transcendence and possibility while I lived it, becomes a fixed, completed object. A destiny. Its meaning is now entirely in the hands of the others who survive me and interpret it. I finally am something definite, but only because I am no longer there to transcend it. My life is possessed by others.
And because death ends the project, it can't be my project. I can't freely choose death as my ultimate possibility.
Correct. Suicide, for Sartre, isn't choosing death as a possibility within life. It's an attempt to annihilate all possibility, all projects. Death represents the ultimate triumph of the other's perspective, the final transformation of the for itself into mere in itself for those who remain.
Okay, so we're free, constantly redefining our past through our projects until death fixes our meaning for others. But this freedom isn't happening in a vacuum. There are constraints, right? This is facticity.
Yes, facticity is crucial. It's the brute givenness of our situation. It's the raw material that freedom works on. It's the in itself at the heart of the for itself.
What does that include? My body, my birthplace, my historical era.
All of that. It's the inapprehensible given. Freedom needs facticity. You can't be free from nothing. You have to be free within a situation. Sartre talks about a twofold contingency. I must exist somewhere, being there, but it's contingent that I exist at all. And it's contingent what specific situation I find myself in. My body, place, time.
In this feeling of raw, brute existence, the sheer thatness of things, this is what his novel Nausea explores.
Nausea is the literary embodiment of encountering pure facticity. The protagonist, Quentin, experiences this overwhelming sense of the world's superfluousness, its too-muchness. Things lose their familiar names and functions and just are massively, glutinously present. Nausea is the taste of my facticity, the visceral awareness of my own contingent existence bound up with this brute being in itself.
It's the feeling of being inescapably there, connected to this meaningless contingent stuff.
Exactly. My freedom operates on this stuff, gives it meaning through projects, but it can't escape the fundamental contingency of being there in the first place.
How does the body fit into facticity and freedom? Is it just another object, another part of it in itself?
Not quite, or at least not the body as I live it. My body isn't primarily an object for me. It's the center of my perspective on the world. It's the 0 point of my situation. Things in the world, tools, obstacles indicate my body to me.
Like, the distance to that cup tells me about my arm's reach.
Right. The body is the individuality and contingency of my relation to the world, the way the world appears to me. Think about sense perception, like sight. There's a necessity. An object has to appear visually in some way. But there's contingency. The specific perspective I have, the angle, the focus, is my free choice interacting with the facticity of my body's position.
But the body for others is different.
Radically different.
Right.
When the other looks at me, my body becomes an object for them. It's apprehended as their transcendence instrument, yes, but also just as flesh, as the objective facticity of my being there. Their world. It's part of the situation they have to deal with.
Okay, so the for itself is this lack, grappling with facticity, aiming for what? What's the fundamental drive, if not just survival?
Since the for itself is fundamentally a lack of being, its core desire is to overcome that lack. It desires to become solid, complete, self-justifying like the in itself, but while retaining consciousness. This leads to the drive for appropriation, the desire to have.
To possess things, is it just about material goods?
It goes much deeper than materialism. Even the desire to know is a form of appropriation for Sartre. To know something is, in a way, to possess it, to master it, to make its being part of my world. The ultimate desire is to appropriate the being of the object, symbolically incorporating its solidity into my own lack.
You mentioned Sartre had a personal example involving smoking.
Yes, it's a fascinating passage. He describes his act of smoking tobacco not just as a habit, but as a symbolic act of destructively appropriating the entire world.
How so?
The burning tobacco represented the world being consumed, going up in smoke, and being absorbed by him. It was like a sacrifice where the essence of the world passed into him through the smoke. Quitting smoking required a conscious decrystallization, stripping the act of this symbolic weight, reducing tobacco back to just being an herb that burns. He had to cut its connection to his project of possessing the world.
Wow. So our relationship with objects, with knowing, with consuming, it's all tied into this impossible project of becoming a self-sufficient being.
That's the underlying ontological drive. And how we relate to this drive distinguishes different attitudes towards life. He contrasts the serious man with the attitude of play.
The serious man takes things too seriously.
In a specific way, the serious man grants more reality and importance to the external world, to objects, values, social roles, causes, than to his own subjective freedom. He invests his being in the world, trying to find his foundation out there.
Like defining himself entirely by his career or his political cause.
Exactly. He treats these external things as having absolute value, independent of his own choice. In doing so, he hides his own freedom, dismisses his own subjectivity as less real than the objective world. He's essentially in bad faith, taking himself for an object defined by external anchors.
And play is the opposite.
Play, for Sartre, is an attitude that strips the world of this absolute seriousness. The player recognizes the rules are contingent, the goals are freely chosen. Play doesn't aim to possess the world or solidify the self as an object. It affirms the lightness, the freedom, the non-substantiality of the forward self. It's the least possessive, least serious attitude. Hashtag outro.
Okay, we've covered a huge amount of ground. From the pre-reflective consciousness all the way to bad faith, the look, and the project of being, we've really mapped out Sartre's structure of existence.
And what emerges is this central paradox. The for itself human consciousness is this constant lack, this nothingness, condemned to be free.
And its fundamental project, the thing it's always striving for, is impossible.
It's impossible. The project is to become the in itself for itself, to be a being that is both fully conscious and fully solid, self-contained, its own foundation. Like God, essentially causa sui, the cause of itself. Consciousness becomes substance.
The man-God. But because consciousness is a lack, a distance, it can never achieve that solidity without ceasing to be consciousness.
Precisely. It's a perpetual failure. We are, in Sartre's view, useless passions, striving for an impossible synthesis. It's a tragic structure, but it's also the source of our radical freedom.
Which brings us back to responsibility. If we're condemned to be free, we're condemned to be responsible. But how absolute is that? What about real-world constraints? Poverty, oppression, historical forces? Surely I'm not responsible for those.
Sartre's answer is uncompromisingly yes. You are responsible. Not in the sense that you cause them, but in the sense that you choose the meaning they have for you.
Okay, explain that. Freedom isn't the power to just get what you want.
No. Freedom isn't the freedom to obtain. I can't just choose to be rich and become rich. It's the freedom to determine oneself, to wish or choose. We're always free in situation. The situation itself, the poverty, the war, the illness, the facticity, the given.
The brute fact.
The brute fact. But it's my freedom, and only my freedom, that decides what that fact means, how I relate to it. Are my chains a symbol of despair, a call to rebellion, a reason for resignation? That meaning isn't in the chains, it's conferred by my free project.
So I am responsible for the meaning of my situation, even if I didn't create the facts of it. That's a heavy burden. Every choice defines me, defines my world.
Absolutely. And that leads to the final provocative thought from Sartre we wanted to leave you with, connecting back to time and choice. He points out something profound about finitude.
It's not just about dying.
No. Finitude, for Sartre, is an ontological structure of choosing itself. When you make a choice, choose possibility A, you don't just put possibility B on hold, you irremediably reject it. You annihilate it as your possibility.
Meaning, even if I live forever, I can never go back to that exact moment and choose B instead.
Exactly. The choice itself slams the door. It's final. Even for an immortal being, Sartre says, it would be impossible to recover his stroke, to undo the choice and restore the alternative. Finitude is built into the act of choosing, not just the limit of lifespan.
Wow.
So the question for you, the listener, is, knowing that every significant choice you make today irrevocably excludes an alternative path for all eternity, regardless of how long you live. What does that realization do to the weight and meaning of your choices right now?
That is definitely something to mull over. A challenging end to a challenging but incredibly rewarding deep dive. Thank you for guiding us through the complexities of being and nothingness.
It was a pleasure. It's a text that keeps on giving.
And to you, our listeners, keep questioning, keep diving deep. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.